This is an update on the Ukraine-Russia war and explains what the bombshell development of strikes deep into Russian territory mean and other signals on start of World War III. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. In my video of December 2, 2022, titled My Guess on What is Going on in China with the COVID lockdowns and protests, I explained that zero COVID policy and lockdowns had nothing to do with COVID or threats to Xi Jinping's position in China. These were orchestrated events to try and deceive the United States into believing that Xi Jinping, as leader of China, was on shaky ground and that the USA could attack China. I said that was foolish thinking because the USA and British Commonwealth nations have the best agricultural, energy, mineral, and natural resources in the world, as well as the best technology, and were the only group of nations entirely self sufficient. They have absolutely no reason to attack Germany and China, who are deficient in many types of resources. China has proved me right in my analysis very quickly. Wall Street Journal reported on December 7, 2022, that China has scrapped most COVID testing and quarantine requirements in a policy pivot. It has curtailed the power of local officials to shut down entire city blocks as the government accelerates plans to dismantle zero COVID controls in the wake of nationwide protests. It seems China and Germany have divided spheres in which they will work to try and provoke the Third World War. China is working mainly in Asia, while Germany will work in Europe and the United States. I explained in my November 28, 2022 video that China is now deeply involved with the Taliban regime and has installed nuclear weapons and missile systems to deliver them in Afghanistan to be used against North India's Punjabis as soon as the World War starts, or even to provoke the Third World War, because then US would be forced to respond to protect the Punjabis. In my video of November 17, 2022, titled Russia-Ukraine War, my guess is that the Nazi Zelensky is at it again. I explained that the Nazi Zelensky, president of Ukraine, under Germany's direction, had a missile lobbed into Poland, killing 2 Polish citizens to get the United States and NATO involved in a war with Russia. Hey, why not? There is no harm in trying, right? Of course. Everyone saw through the scheme, though won't say it publicly. China tried its fake zero COVID policy, lockdowns, and fake citizen protests to project weakness, that China is a house divided and that Xi Jinping's leadership is under threat, to induce the United States to attack China. That has not worked because the USA has no incentive to pick a fight with China. And the USA, British Commonwealth nations simply do not go around planning war with anyone unless directly under threat. Now there has been a new development in the Ukraine-Russia war. According to the Associated Press, on Monday, December 5, 2022, Ukraine launched unprecedented attacks on 2 air bases deep inside Russia, killing 3 servicemen and wounding 4. The attacks on the Engels base in the Saratov region on the Volga River and the Dyagilevo base in the Ryazan region in western Russia were some of the most audacious inside Russia during the war. These attacks were more than 300 miles inside Russia from its border with Ukraine. Then the next day, other drone attacks were launched. AP states a fire broke out at an airfield in Russia's southern Kursk region that borders Ukraine after a drone hit the facility, the region's governor said Tuesday. In a second incident, an industrial plant 80 kilometers or 50 miles from the Ukrainian border was also targeted by drones, which missed a fuel depot at the site, Russian independent media reported. Russia responded with more waves of missile attacks on civilian and infrastructure targets, killing which killed civilians. My hope is that Russia is targeting German mass-murdered civilians in Ukraine rather than genuine ethnic Ukrainians. In the meanwhile, the Nazi Zelensky vowed to push Russian forces out of all of Ukraine territory, which I assume includes Crimea. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in a news conference stated that the United States has neither encouraged nor enabled the Ukrainians to strike inside Russia. But he reiterated the U.S. position that the U.S. and other partners will ensure that the Ukrainians will have the equipment that they need to defend themselves, to defend their territory, to defend their freedom. Russia's defense ministry stated that the attacks were launched with Soviet made drones inherited from the time Ukraine split from the Soviet Union. All these news reports and public statements are pure hogwash from all sides except US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's statement. This is what really happened. In 2014, when the two nations had developed new weapon systems to bring down aircraft without firing projectiles or missiles to build confidence that they were in it together, China and Germany agreed to bring down various aircraft together. China brought down Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on March 8, 2014, killing all 227 passengers and 12 crew aboard. Then it was Germany's turn to test the weapon. On July 17, 2014, just about 4 months later, Germany brought down Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 in eastern Ukraine. All 298 people on board, most of whom were citizens of the Netherlands, including scientists, died in the crash. Subsequently, more passenger airliners such as those of Indonesian, Ethiopian, and Ukrainian airlines were brought down. Since then, both nations have tried to inveigle Iran to start a war with the United States. That effort failed after the United States killed General Soleimani, and I also warned the Ayatollah about China's real design, which was to see how the USA would respond to an attack by Iran and then decide if it wanted to get involved in the war or not. Most likely, the Ayatollah and Iran would be left holding the bag to bear the brunt of US retaliation alone. Then China tried to inveigle India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to kill all the approximately 50,000 Punjabi Sikh soldiers in the various Indian military services and commit genocide on the Sikhs. The US has sent a warning to Modi by killing India's top general Bipin Rawat by bringing down his helicopter on December 8, 2021, killing him, his wife, and 11 others. Then Modi tried to inveigle leaders from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh states of India to kill Sikhs to see how the USA would respond. I warned those leaders that they risk their most populated cities being obliterated in nuclear strikes. That ended that attempt to start the World War. Germany and China's plan is to attack and conquer the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. But they were not sure how Russia would respond. So they wanted to ensure that Russia would not get into the conflict against them. To prevent Russia from joining the war on the US side, they deliberately provoked a war with Russia by planning to install nuclear weapons in Ukraine to be used against Russia, and also build biological and chemical weapons there. Russia had no choice but to intervene to prevent that from happening. It attacked Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Ukraine will continue to be supplied with weapons by the West, including German mass creators in the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, to keep Russia tied down indefinitely in the war. After seeing Russia's poor performance in the war, Germany and China got other ideas. Instead of first attacking the United States and British Commonwealth nations, they then started planning to attack Russia instead to capture as much of the energy and other resources they could, depose President Putin of Russia, and install a puppet regime headed by a German mass creator in Russia. That is the current plan they intend to implement. first making sure that German masqueraders in the United States and British Commonwealth nations are ready to start a civil war in these countries. After conquering Russia, they will then deal with the United States and British Commonwealth nations and Israel. Since China borders Russia, the plan was for Russia to attack China. But China got cold feet for fear that just as they planned for Iran and Modi's India to be left holding the bag if they started a war and the war did not go as planned, they did not want it to be to be left holding the bag if they attacked Russia and Germany did not attack Russia simultaneously. Therefore, China told Germany that they should fire the first salvo against Russia. After that, China would launch a full scale attack on Russia, expecting Germany with its own soldiers to attack Russia from Ukrainian soil, in addition to using Ukrainian soldiers. Though Germany was using German masqueraders in Ukraine with the Nazis Zelensky leading them, China wanted Germany itself to fire the first salvo of the war on Russia, so that Russia would have to deal with Germany simultaneously with China. Germany did precisely that on December 5, 2022, in the so called drone attacks on deep within Russian territory. The weapons used against Russia's air bases were actually not Soviet era drones, but new weapons Germany and China have developed to bring down aircraft or destroy them in air bases. The weapons would be the same or similar to the ones used to bring down the Malaysian and Indonesian airliners, probably laser weapons. Ukraine did not use drones to bomb Russian air bases. It was an attack carried out by Germany and not from Ukrainian soil but from Germany itself. Those are the weapons that did the damage. However, it's possible that some drones may also have been launched from Ukraine as a cover, but the drones were not responsible for the damage. Of course, Russia already knows that this was a direct attack by Germany on Russia. Now, ABC News reported that while speaking in a televised meeting in Russia with members of his Human Rights Council, President Putin was asked to pledge that Russia would not be the first to use nuclear weapons. He protested, saying that Russia would not be able to use nuclear weapons at all if it agreed not to use them first and then came under a nuclear strike. If it doesn't use it first under any circumstances, it means that it won't be the second to use it either, because the possibility of using it in case of a nuclear strike on our territory would be sharply limited, Putin said. Putin rejected Western criticism that his comments amounted to saber rattling, claiming they were not a factor provoking an escalation of conflicts, but a factor of deterrence. We haven't gone mad. We are fully aware of what nuclear weapons are, President Putin said. He added without elaborating, we have them and they are more advanced and state of the art than what any other nuclear power has. Now, further signs that Germany is escalating the situation is the attacks on the power grid in North Carolina in the United States on Saturday, December 3, 2022, when two electrical substations were shot up, causing about 45,000 customers to lose power, prompting local officials to declare a state of emergency, according to ABC News. Just 3 days prior to the attacks, the Federal Department of Homeland Security had issued a warning in a bulletin that lone offenders and small groups could be plotting attacks and that the nation's critical infrastructure was among the possible targets. No suspects or motives have been identified, but rest assured these were not random attacks. German masqueraders and or their allies were behind these attacks on the electric substations. It's now been reported that attacks on power substations were carried out in Oregon and Washington states also last month, but were not reported in the media because the damage did not result in power outages because of the redundancy built in those substations. Now, the utilities companies have said that they would report such attacks to the authorities in the future. Most electrical distribution substations across the country are vulnerable to similar attacks because they are usually in remote rural areas, left unattended, and have little security. Mass traders have showed their willingness to set fires to homes and communities in the unprecedented fire activity over the past few years during the lengthened fire season. They are signaling their readiness to cause chaos in the United States and start a civil war as soon as Germany and China take the first step to start a war either with Russia or the United States. Now, I'm no expert in military strategy, so I cannot predict how the war will unfold. But what Germany and China are doing should leave no doubt in anyone's mind that both nations will now take steps quickly to start a war directly with Russia. It's possible that China could launch a preemptive nuclear strike because the nuclear weapons of both nations are in China. In that case, the nuclear strike would probably be launched simultaneously on Russia, the United States, and British Commonwealth nations. Or China could launch a ground attack on Russia with conventional weapons, while Germany could attack Russia simultaneously with its own troops through Ukraine alongside Ukrainian forces while being ready to use nuclear weapons as needed. When this happens, German masqueraders and their allies would begin their civil war in the United States and British Commonwealth nations, destroying power grids, setting fires in cities and towns, destroying other infrastructure, and civilians and military personnel killing each other. Till China and Germany attack Russia, Russia can keep responding by destroying more of Ukraine's residential properties and infrastructure and killing civilians in missile strikes. Germany may launch more strikes within Russia just as it did on Monday and Tuesday to provoke Russia to respond with deadlier force. In the meantime, China may induce the Afghans to launch an attack on North India. All this may take place quicker than we imagine and escalate in a hurry. Of course, I do not set dates. The parties may decide to take a step back from their escalations, but the way Germany and China are behaving, they seem to be determined to start the Third World War as soon as possible. Again, we are closer to the start of the Third World War than we can imagine. If any have been waiting to set their spiritual house in order just before the beginning of the end time catastrophic events, that time has now arrived. On a personal note, I would like to express my deep and sincere gratitude to President Putin for releasing WNBA star Brittany Griner from Russian prison so that she can come home. I again appeal to him sincerely to release American prisoner Paul Whelan also. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.